What if I told you that in 1973, a 7-year-old boy walked into a psychiatric hospital in Prague and calmly described the texture of Martian soil beneath his feet? What if I told you he could draw detailed maps of cities that shouldn't exist, speak words in a language that predated human civilization, and remember being born under 2 crimson suns? This is the story of Victor Kronos, a child whose memories defied everything we thought we knew about consciousness, reality, and the very nature of human existence. His case file, buried for decades in the archives of the Czechoslovak State Security, reveals a truth so disturbing that 3 psychiatrists refused to continue treating him, and 1 disappeared entirely. But Victor's memories weren't just impossible. They were precise, detailed, and somehow verifiable. Dr. Helena Moravkova had seen everything in her 20-year career treating disturbed children. Trauma cases, abuse survivors, children who had witnessed horrors that would break grown men. But nothing prepared her for the boy who was brought to her office on a grey October morning in 1970-3. Victor Kronos was 7 years old, with pale skin and eyes the color of winter ice. His parents, both respected engineers in Prague, had exhausted every medical resource trying to understand their son's condition. The boy claimed he wasn't from Earth. More specifically, he insisted he had been born on Mars, in what he called the glass cities of the Northern Hemisphere. At first, Dr. Moravkova dismissed it as an elaborate fantasy, perhaps triggered by the boy's exposure to science fiction. But as Victor began to speak, her clinical skepticism gave way to something far more unsettling. Victor didn't just claim to remember Mars. He described it with the precision of someone recalling their childhood home. He spoke of cities built from a translucent material that captured and refracted light, creating rainbow patterns that danced across streets paved with what he called memory stone. He described rivers that flowed, not with water, but with liquid light that sang when touched. The boy drew maps. Detailed, consistent maps of Martian geography that included features no 7-year-old in 1973 should have known existed. Mountain ranges, crater formations, and underground cavern systems that wouldn't be discovered by Earth's space probes for decades. But it was the language that truly disturbed Dr. Moravkova. Victor would sometimes stop mid-sentence and begin speaking in sounds that resembled no human tongue. When pressed, he explained he was thinking in birth speak, the language of his original home. Dr. Moravkova recorded hours of these utterances and sent them to linguists across Eastern Europe. The response was unanimous and terrifying. The sounds followed linguistic patterns too complex for a child to fabricate, yet they matched no known human language, living or dead. As weeks turned to months, Victor's memories became more vivid, more detailed, and more impossible to dismiss. He described his Martian parents, beings who communicated through touch and lived for centuries. He spoke of a society that had mastered what he called consciousness transfer, the ability to move one's awareness between bodies across vast distances of space. According to Victor, he had been selected for something called the Earth seeding. His consciousness had been transferred into a human fetus. His memories suppressed until his 7th year, when they would naturally begin to resurface. He was, he claimed, one of hundreds of Martian consciousnesses now living in human bodies. Across the planet, Dr. Moravkova might have dismissed this as the elaborate delusion of a troubled child. If not for what happened next, Victor began to demonstrate abilities that had no scientific explanation. He could sense magnetic fields, becoming agitated and disoriented near large electrical equipment. He showed an intuitive understanding of advanced mathematics and physics, solving problems that university students struggled with. Most disturbing of all, he began to predict natural disasters with uncanny accuracy. 3 days before the devastating earthquake that struck Guatemala in February 1976, Victor became violently ill, screaming about the screaming earth and drawing pictures of collapsing buildings. When news of the disaster reached Prague, Dr. Moravkova found Victor's drawings bore an unsettling resemblance to actual photographs of the destruction. The case took a darker turn when Victor began to speak of the others, the other Martian consciousnesses, living in human bodies. He claimed he could sense them, scattered across the globe, all slowly awakening to their true nature. He drew portraits of children, he said, were like him. A girl in Tokyo who spoke to machines. A boy in New York who could see through solid matter. Twins in Sao Paulo who shared the same consciousness. Dr. Moravkova's attempts to locate these children led her down a rabbit hole of classified government documents and suppressed research. She discovered that several major world powers had been quietly investigating children with similar claims and abilities since the early 1950s. The pattern was always the same. Children around age 7 suddenly developing impossible memories of life on Mars, coupled with abilities that defied scientific understanding. What terrified Dr. Moravkova wasn't just the consistency of these cases across different countries and cultures. It was the fact that these children all described the same Martian civilization, down to minute details of daily life, geography, and technology. By 1978, Victor had become something of a legend in certain psychiatric circles. Researchers from around the world requested permission to study him. But the Czechoslovak authorities had grown suspicious of the international attention. Victor's case file was classified, and Dr. Moravkova was ordered to cease all documentation of his sessions. But Victor's condition was worsening. As his 8th birthday approached, he began to experience what he called the calling. He became increasingly agitated, speaking of a great awakening that was coming. The other Martian consciousnesses, he claimed, were being activated. Soon they would remember their true purpose on Earth. On March 15, 1979, Victor disappeared. He had been staying at a secure facility outside Prague. Under round-the-clock supervision, security footage from that night shows Victor in his room at 11 p.m., sleeping peacefully. At 11:05 p.m., the cameras mysteriously malfunctioned. When they came back online at 11:12 p.m., Victor was gone. No doors had been opened. No windows had been broken. No alarms had been triggered. Victor Kronos had simply vanished from a locked room on the 3rd floor of a heavily guarded building. Dr. Moravkova spent the remaining years of her career searching for answers. She compiled a secret database of similar cases from around the world, documenting over 300 children who had exhibited the same pattern of Martian memories between 1950 and 1980. Then, abruptly, the cases stopped. In 1981, Dr. Moravkova received a package with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, a group of adults standing in what appeared to be a vast underground facility. The technology, visible in the background, was unlike anything she had ever seen. In the center of the group stood a tall man with pale skin and winter blue eyes that she recognized immediately. Victor Kronos had grown up. On the back of the photograph, in Victor's distinctive handwriting, was a single word in that strange language he had spoken as a child. Dr. Moravkova had it analyzed by the same linguists who had studied his childhood utterances. After months of work, they provided a chilling translation. Soon, Dr. Moravkova died in 1994, taking her secrets with her. Her research files were sealed by the Czech government and remain classified to this day. But her assistant, who spoke on condition of anonymity in 2012, revealed that Dr. Moravkova had continued to receive photographs until her death. Always the same group of people, always in locations that couldn't be identified. Always with technology that seemed decades ahead of anything publicly known. In the final photograph, received just weeks before her death, the group had grown to over 200 individuals, men and women of various ages and ethnicities, but all sharing the same unsettling pale eyes. In the background, visible through what appeared to be a massive window, was the curve of a planet that looked suspiciously like Earth. Today, nearly 50 years after Victor Kronos first walked into that Prague psychiatric hospital, the questions remain. Was he a disturbed child with an elaborate fantasy, or evidence of something far more extraordinary and terrifying? The consistency of his memories, the accuracy of his predictions, and his impossible disappearance suggest a truth that challenges our fundamental understanding of reality. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Victor's story isn't what he remembered about Mars, it's what he predicted about Earth. According to Victor, the Martian consciousnesses weren't sent to Earth as explorers or refugees. They were sent as preparation. Mars, he claimed, had become uninhabitable, not through natural disaster, but through the actions of an advanced civilization that had consumed their world's resources and poisoned their atmosphere in pursuit of technological progress. The consciousnesses transferred to Earth weren't here to start over. They were here to ensure that humanity would follow the same path. Victor called it the Great Repetition, a cycle that had played out on countless worlds across the galaxy. The Martians weren't trying to save Earth, they were here to ensure its destruction, so that the cycle could begin again on the next world, if Victor was right. If there really are hundreds or thousands of Martian consciousnesses living among us, slowly awakening to their true purpose, then his childhood memories weren't just impossible. They were a warning of humanity's inevitable fate. The children who remembered being born on Mars weren't victims of delusion. They were the architects of our doom, patiently waiting for the moment when they would complete their ancient mission. And if that final photograph Dr. Moravkova received is genuine, if Victor and his kind are out there right now, watching and waiting, then that moment may be closer than we think. The next time you meet someone with pale skin and winter blue eyes, someone who seems to know things they shouldn't, who speaks with an accent you can't place, ask yourself, are you looking at a human being, or at something that only remembers being one? Because according to Victor Kronos, the Great Awakening has already begun, and we are running out of time.